Hello everybody, it's Murray here and welcome back to my channel, STEWART Paintings. On today's acrylic painting tutorial we're going to paint this gorgeous winter sunset, and I'm going to teach you all how to paint light in a landscape painting. So let's get into it. It's a really easy tutorial today. We're going to use the following colours. They are titanium white, cad yellow, matte orange, burnt sienna, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, sap green, iris purple, burnt umber and matte black. Now I've got a burnt sienna painted canvas and I've used chalk to create an outline. I'm going to have the sun at the end of a path. I'm going to create a lovely light effect of some pine trees either side of the sun. I'm going to have a nice snowy path and I'm going to have some trees here in the foreground coming towards the viewer. So just like always, I'm just going to use some cobalt blue just to roughly block in an outline where I want things to be, and we'll get started. Now, as I say, you don't have to paint your canvas burnt sienna. I do just to use chalk to create an outline just so I can gradually move things about and just plot how I'm going to paint the painting. So nice and easy, we just go get some titanium white and a big brush and we're just going to start blocking it in. So all I'm doing is I'm blocking it in. I'm just speeding up the footage because it's nothing hard. There's no real techniques or anything, so I'm just speeding up the footage. But all I'm doing is I'm making a light grey. I've used titanium white and I've used a dot of cobalt blue and a dot of black, and I've just got this really off-white colour that's just got a hint of black and a dot of blue in it. And all I'm doing is using a big round-headed brush just to block it in. And as I say, I'll put the speed down of the video back to real time in a minute. I'm just showing you how just to block it in. So you don't have to paint your canvas burnt sienna. I just do simply for the fact, I'll show you in about 2 seconds. You can see all the streak marks where I've missed or my paint is watery, and that's the reason I paint my canvas burnt sienna. It's only for that reason. So if you want to paint on a white canvas, please do so. But if you find it easier like me to see where you need to rework areas, just use a dark colour like burnt sienna. So all I'm doing, I'm just blocking it in. And as you can see the burnt sienna shining through. So I'm going to get my hairdryer out and I'm going to give my background just a blitz. So it's nice and dry now, and all I'm going to do is just go over in the exact same colours. So it's just titanium white. Now to make this grey, all you do, look, is you just get lots and lots of white, a dot of blue, and just keep adding a dot, literally like a pinprick of black and white till you get the nice colour. It's just like a silver, so think of a matte grey sort of silver. So you just keep adding dots of black to your white till you get a nice silver colour. So that's all I'm doing, look, just to match it. And all I'm doing, look, I'm just using a big brush and I'm just trying to get rid of all those streaks. So a good easy way to neaten up your painting is to just use a hairdryer and just go over your work with a second coat of paint to get rid of all those brush marks, and you can just make your blending just a little bit smoother. So just try to block it in as quick as you can, and then with the white merging to the light grey, all you do is you get pure titanium white in the middle. I'm just colouring in the edges, why not? And I'm just going to start making X shapes. So I'm going to get lots of titanium white. I'm just going to make little circular shapes. There we go. And then I'm just going to start brushing it into the previous colour. So I'm just gently brushing it in. So what I'll do is I'll slow down the footage for you and I'll zoom in for you so you can all have a look. In 2 seconds, I'm just going to block it in. So just create an X shape. So watch. This is at real time. All I'm doing is using titanium white and I'm just going rocking back and forth, going straight up to the middle of the painting. So we've got all this lovely white in the middle, and we're going to start doing the tree line. So all you need is some cad yellow. I added a tiny bit of Naples yellow, but you really don't have to. It's predominantly cad yellow. So as I say, you don't have to use Naples yellow. If you would like to make a Naples yellow, it's just white, yellow and a dot of black. But It's predominantly cad yellow, so don't worry if you haven't got Naples yet at home. It's a bit of a weird colour. Now we're going to use this thing called a fan brush. So a fan brush is perfect for trees, and all we're going to do is we're going to start in the middle. We're going to leave a slight gap, and once my hand gets out of the way, but all I'm doing, I've turned my fan brush sideways, and we're going to give the impression of pine trees in the background. So think of a Christmas tree. We're going to make lots and lots of them. This is a lovely winter sunset, so I want it very Christmassy and wintry. So what we're going to do, if I zoom in for you, we're going to turn our fan brush. We're going to load it up with this cad yellow. We're just going to turn it sideways so it's upright, and we're just going to make little tree shapes. So some are going to be higher than others, so we're just varying in height, just leaving little gaps between them, and we're just making little trees. So really easy. And then we're going to get the next colour, which is yellow and orange. So more yellow than orange. I'm using a matte orange because it's extremely bright, but just cad yellow and cad orange, and you can mix together and you should get the next colour. So all we're doing the exact same technique with a brighter, more orangey tone. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just doing the exact same technique. Now there's a big jump between the cad yellow and that new brighter orangey yellow. So what you can do to merge the two is just go back to the cad yellow and just smooth it into the new colour. So just mix the two colours together, and you should, once my hand gets out of the way, get a lovely seamless transition in colour. So you'll go from yellow to the more orangey yellow look. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to have this sunlight in the middle, and we're going to have this transition of colour to create this gorgeous sort of far away pine trees. So all we're doing, look, we're just creating the illusion of trees. So this tutorial is perfect for beginners. It's really, really easy, this tutorial. We're not going to do much detail. I'm going to teach you how to use colours to create the light. So don't worry, there's not going to be any hard detail in this tutorial. So we're going to go to a third colour. So we're getting darker because the tree colours are getting less sunlight as they get further to the right and left of the sun. So we're going to add some orange to the mix, and we're going to add a little bit of sap green and some yellow. Now sap green should turn it a bit more browner, so we've got this orangey browny yellow. So there we go, look, and we're going to load up our fan brush. We're going to mix it all together, and we're going to do the exact same technique. So look, all we're doing, if you imagine the sun is right in the middle at the end of our path, so either side the pine trees are going to get darker in colour. So don't worry if they are scruffy. I'll teach you a brush technique for your pine trees in a little while. But all we want to do is just block in and work on our transition. So just like before, we want to blend the two tones. So we're going to go back to the tone we had before, which was yellow and orange mixed together. And we're just going to blend the two tones. So again, we're just working on our transitions. We're working on this impression of light. So by doing this, we can trick the viewer's eyes. Look at that. Look how wonderful this is starting to take shape. It's so quick and easy. And then we're going to go to the last colour. So we're going to mix green. So some sap green, some cad orange just to make it a greeny brown. So lots of cad orange and lots of sap green mixed together. You should get a burnt sienna sort of colour, and add a little bit of purple. Greens and purple are really good. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to frame the painting. So we want everyone to look at our sunset right down the middle. So by having darker edges and darker corners, we can get the viewer to look straight down the bottom, straight down the middle of our path and into the painting. So by just making and then make it look really realistic, just using colour, it also just makes the painting nice and framed. And we're just going to go back to the previous tone, exactly the same technique over again, and we're just going to merge the two colours just so the transition's nice and smooth. And we're just going to do the same on the other side so it looks like a mirror. So there we go. How easy was that? So we've got this lovely transition in colour, and we're just going to take some of that sky colour. So it was lots and lots of titanium white and some dots of black just to make it more earthy, and a tiny bit of cobalt blue, just a dot of cobalt blue. And again, we're just trying to make around the sun, right? So as it's getting further away from the sun, all the snow, it's going to get cooler in tone because it's getting less sunlight. So we're going to add some cerulean blue and some cobalt blue together. So if you mix cerulean blue and cobalt blue together and add tons and tons and tons of white and a dot of black, you should get this lovely premixed colour. So cerulean blue, cobalt blue, lots and lots and lots and lots of white, and a dot of black, and you should get this very nice pastel light blue. And all we're going to do is we're just going to merge that lovely silver tone that we mixed with this new pastel blue, and we're just going to block in our snow. And then all we're going to do, we're going to add a tiny bit of more cobalt blue to the mix and a dot of purple, and you should get a cooler blue. So to make your blues more cooler, if you just add a little bit more cobalt blue and less white and a dot of purple just to make it nice and cool and earthy, you should get this nice, again, pastel darker blue. And all we're going to do is just, again, frame the composition. So again, I'm just going to go over it. If you just dry your work. Now what I'm going to do here, I kind of liked the fact there was some rough scrags of my canvas with the burnt sienna shining through. So I'm going to kind of leave some gaps. So I'm using the exact same colour, that lovely sort of sky colour, but all I'm doing is just leaving some gaps. And I'm trying to just create the image of texture. So people's footprints or sort of tracks where sleighs come through. I'm going to get a little bit of Naples yellow. So Naples yellow is just yellow with some white and a dot of black just to make a creamy yellow. But you don't need to use that. You can just use cad yellow, some white and a dot of black. I'm just putting a little bit of heat around the base where the sunlight is coming through. I'm going to go back to that lighter blue. So it was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, lots of white and a dot of black. So all I'm doing, I'm leaving slight gaps in the underpainting just to make it look like footprints and sort of terrain. And I'm just blocking in the snow. But again, I'm trying to work on my transition. So just as we've got a lovely transition in light and colour on our far away pine trees, we want to do the same with our blues now, our shadow tones, to imply coolness as it's getting less sunlight here in the corners. Because we're far away, if you think of it. If we were looking at that sun, we would be standing almost in the shade. So we want to try to recreate that. So all I'm doing, I'm using some of that dark, cooler blue just to give the impression of sort of sleigh tracks or footprints in the snow. So again, we're not going to go to super detailed. It is for beginners, this tutorial. We're just going to imply detail using colour. So just like normal, I'm just trying to darken up the base of the painting and darken up the corners to draw the viewer's eyes to the center. So I'm just using some of this dark pastel blue just to sort of frame the painting and just go around the edges. So it's starting to look really pretty. Our sunset's looking really nice. And we've got these lovely cool blues to imply sort of the snow and the shadow in the snow. So our winter sunset is starting to take shape. Now it's all blocked in. And we're just blending it into the previous tones. So there we go, it's looking fab. We've got this central point in the middle. We've got this lovely transition and we've got this nice sort of blocked in snow area. So we're going to do the same trick that we did with the far off pine trees, but we're going to do it nearer trees that are in the foreground. We're going to use a fine liner. So if you've got a small brush with a fine nib on the end, what we're going to do is we're going to create that bright yellow again. So it's just cad yellow. So I'm going to mix some cad yellow. As I say, you can put a tiny bit of white into it just to make it a bit more creamier. But predominantly cad yellow. And then we're just going to mix some cad yellow and orange, but more cad yellow than orange, just to create that really nice sort of golden yellow colour. So we've got two shades, okay? And all we're going to do is we're going to swap over to a fine liner. So these paint brushes, they're very cheap to buy, but they've got very, very sharp bristles all in a line, and they're perfect for painting thin trees. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to draw a straight line straight down in that bright yellow and coming down to the base of the snow. Now these are trees off towards the sun, so that's why they're picking up the light from the sun, and that's why they're in such a bright colour. So by using a fine liner, you can get really, really thin trees. Always try to make your trunk at the base of your tree a bit thicker than the top of your tree, otherwise it will look strange. So always make the trunk at the base of the tree where it hits the snow a little bit thicker. We're going to swap over to the darker of the two yellows, this goldeny orangey yellow, and we're just going to do two trees that are just a bit nearer, so that's why they're a bit cooler, so they're a bit more orangey because they're getting less sunlight as they come towards the viewer. Because we're using all the same tones, everything should match. So as I say, this is really perfect for beginners. We just want to teach you how to use colour to create realism in your work. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just creating these near trees with that fine liner. So that looks great, and it all matches. Look, so it all matches the transitions. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the same colours. So on the far off tree, the one nearest to the sun, which was bright yellow, I'm just going to use that fine liner just to create some spindly branches. So a fine liner is excellent for this. All I'm doing, I'm just creating some spindly branches. So let the brush do all the work. As I say, they are very cheap to buy. I think they're about $1. Or you can buy a multi-pack of paintbrushes, which has things like the fan brush that we used earlier and one of these in them. So they're a good investment. So all we're trying to do is almost create a bright silhouette, a yellow silhouette and a golden silhouette. So we're going to do the exact same technique. So all we're trying to do is just create really thin branches with a fine liner. Now if you're very nervous when you paint and you haven't got a steady hand, if you always dry your painting before putting things like branches and leaves on, If you make a mistake, you can always just wipe them away with a baby wipe or a wet piece of kitchen towel, and your background will look back to normal. So if you make a mistake on any of your branches, you can always just wipe it away as long as your background is dry. So look, it's all starting to take shape now. Just creating really thin branches. So we've got a dry background. So as I say, if you dry it and we move back to the fan brush, we're just going to load up the same color paint so it all matches. So we're going to first do the yellow. So I'm going to load up my fan brush. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to tip it sideways, and I'm just going to let the edge of the fan brush and let the bristles sort of touch down on the canvas. And it's perfect, this brush, for creating leaves. Fan brushes are excellent for creating the illusion of texture. So they're brilliant for leaves, they're brilliant for trying to do trees, and they're brilliant for grass. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just tipping it sideways, and I'm just creating little shapes to imply leaves that are picking up that sunlight. So really easy peasy, just trying to create shapes. So there we go. So 2 trees down, we're just going to do the nearer trees. So we're just going to move back to the orange and yellow. Exactly the same technique. So watch. Just pushing down and creating little shapes. Leaving gaps in between just to imply the sky and the leaves. So again, the brush does all the work. So it's a really good investment to buy some of these brushes. So there we go, that looks fab. So let's do the other one. So all I'm doing, I'm just gently pushing down on the canvas, and because of the shapes of the bristles, because they're a fan, they're just creating splodges that look like leaves. So we'll do the last one, there we go, and our 2 trees are finished. So they're looking excellent. So we're going to make a darker tone now, and these are going to be trees that are in the foreground. So these are going to be trees that are getting less sun, so they're going to be a little bit darker in colour and tone. So we're going to add orange, sap green, a bit of cad yellow, and a little bit more orange just to heat it back up. And we're going to make a warm sort of tan colour, so a sort of tan brown colour. I think we put a little bit more orange in it actually. Now looking at it, a little bit more orange. There we go. So we've got this really, really nice colour, and we're just going to either use a flat brush or a fine liner, whatever you find easier. So with a flat brush, you can just use the edge of the brush and just come straight down in a straight line, and that's what's great about a flat brush, a flat-headed brush. So that it just comes straight down, really, really easy. My brush was brand new. I bought a pack today, and I made a boo-boo, watch. So I pushed down a bit too hard, and because the brush was so new, it split and made a massive splat on my canvas. But as I say, because my canvas is dry, all I've done is dried it with a hairdryer. I just use a baby wipe and just wipe away that tree. So as I say, if you're nervous or you make a mistake, if you dry your work in each stage, you can always do what I'm doing and just switch back to your favourite brush. I find this one easier, and you can just reapply paint. And because you've dried it, you haven't smeared everything and you haven't mucked anything up. So if you get nervous or you make a mistake, just dry your work at each stage and then put the trees and the branches over the top. So there we go. So just like either side of the sun with the pine trees in the background, what we're doing is we're trying to make our nearer trees a little bit darker in colour so they look like they're nearer to the viewer. So that's why we're doing them slightly darker in this lovely sort of tan colour. So exactly the same technique. We're going to use the fine liner to create our spindly branches, just like we did with the previous two trees. And you can make your branches a little bit bigger, a little bit thicker, because these trees are nearer to the viewer. But can you see, just as we're painting along, can you see how the colour is tricking your eyes? There's no detail. It's not hard. It's all the colour. So look, just create little Y shapes. And these can be our little spindly branches. There we go. Easy peasy. And we're going to swap to our fan brush and do exactly what we did for the two previous ones. So all we're doing, look, we're just doing little splodges using the corner of the brush, letting the bristles go against the canvas. Just push down very gently and it will create the impression of far away leaves. So there we go, there's one. Easy peasy. And then get some more paint and let's do the other side. So there we go. Now for our last two trees, we're going to make a really dark colour. We're going to get burnt umber and we're going to mix some cobalt blue into the burnt umber. So burnt umber, so brown, and we're going to add cobalt blue to make it very, very dark. And then we're just going to add a tiny bit of orange just to heat it up. So you can either use burnt sienna, which is the colour I paint my canvas, or you can use orange. And what that does is it just heats the colour up. So it's not quite black, because it's blue and brown together. It's very, very dark, so almost like a silhouette. And because you've added a little bit of orange or a little bit of burnt sienna, you've just added a little bit of heat to the mix. It just makes the colour look more realistic. So again, if you do what I did, and you made a big splodge in the middle of your tree, just make the base of your tree, so make the trunk at the bottom wider, just so it looks more realistic. So the bottom of the tree is always wider. So all we're doing, we're using that colour, again, just to trick the viewer's eyes to make it look realistic. And these trees are right close to the viewer. They're far away from the sun, so that's why they're cooler in colour and temperature, and that's why they're darker, because they're getting less sunlight. So easy peasy. Let's do the other one. So again, all I'm doing is using a flat brush. I'm just letting the brush do all the work, because it's got a straight edge. It's really fantastic for painting trees. So there we go. But can you see gradually how the colours are tricking your eyes, how it's making it look like it's closer to you, these trees, and how those coloured ones look far off. And you can do this trick with anything. So all I'm going to do, last trees, just going to do the same trick. So we're going to use the fine liner, and then we'll use the fan brush to put some leaves. So first we do the fine liner, and as I say, if you dry your work in each stage, if you make a mistake, you can always just reapply it. put a bit too much water here on my brush, and then I stuck my finger in the paint while I was painting the tree, and I smeared it, and I made a mistake. So as I say, if you do make a mistake and you've dried your background look, you can just wipe away that branch. You haven't lost any of the detail that we've done because you've dried your work, and you just paint back the branch. So acrylics are super easy. They are perfect for beginners because, as I say, you can just dry areas as you're working and then literally reapply paint over the top. Just debating here where to have a branch. So we're just painting, we're just relaxing, letting the brush, by adding a little bit of water to the end of the brush. What it does is it just makes the bristles go to a really extreme sharp point, and also it just glides across the canvas. So last bit, I'm just getting some of that blue and brown, just remixing it. Got a tiny bit of green to it, and still a bit of orange just to heat it up, just so I can make a really dark earthy shadow. And these are all the leaves that are closest to the viewer, that are hardly getting any sun, so they're almost a silhouette. So they're very cool and dark because they're in the shade. So that same technique, just little splats. And as I say, just like the branches, if you do what I did just then, you do too big a splat, you can always wipe it away, just redo it. So if you don't like your leaves, like I didn't, you can always just redo them. Just painting a branch. It's no bother. So as I say, it's a super easy technique, and all the brushes do all the work. So it's starting to look really good. We've got our trees. I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to start neatening up everything just to make it look less shabby. I think because when we were blocking in, we've done it so quick, it just looks a bit manky. So all I'm doing, I'm just using the previous colours. I've got some yellow and I've got that orange and yellow. And all I'm doing, I'm just making the transitions just look a bit nicer. So I'm just making them look a bit smoother by just going over the top. Now that they're all dry, I'm just reworking areas. Now I'm going to get some of that cool blue. So that was cerulean blue, cobalt blue, lots of white and a bit of purple. And I'm going to add a little bit more purple to make it even more cool, so a bit darker. So purple and blues are perfect for snow to create shadows. So if you want to ever create some cool shadows in your snow, purples and blues are fantastic. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just using a fine liner and I'm just going to create some of the shadows from some of the trees. So again, I'm just debating where the sun is, and just think, well, it's in the middle, why not have some silhouettes of some of our trees, just to give it a little bit more added detail. So all I'm doing, look, I'm just using that purpley blue, and I'm just creating little subtle lines coming down from some of the trees, just so it looks like a silhouette. And again, just gives it another added bit of detail. It's really easy. And just around some of the base of the trees, I'm just creating some shadows. So I'm just using that purpley blue. just to imply some texture. And again, I just want to frame the painting, so just around the edges either side, I'm just making it a little bit tad darker because I want you to focus down the middle. And if you're using a small brush, what you can do is you can just create sort of footprints or little divots in the snow using that shadow tone just to imply texture. So I know a lot of people are coming up to Christmas and they want to paint winter scenes, and there's lots of great inspiration with the weather. You can take great pictures. So all we're trying to do, as I say, is we're just trying to create colours and the impression of texture, so some little footprints just with the colours, just with the tones. So we're just applying detail. Now I'm going to show you a little trick, a little brush technique. So we're going to mix some burnt umber, some orange, and a tiny bit of yellow. So burnt umber, some orange, and some cad yellow. And I'm going to show you a cool technique. So we're going to create some light on the left hand side. So this side of the tree is getting sunlight. So we're going to go down the left hand side, and all we're going to do is we're just going to apply some bark. So we're going to apply some knocks on our tree, and we're just going to leave some of the undercolour, and we're just going to leave gaps, and we're going to try to make the impression that this tree is more 3D and it's got bark and it's got more texture. So by just using that hot colour, we can add some highlights. And if we flip back to some burnt umber, a little bit of black, and some cobalt blue. So burnt umber, cobalt blue, and a little bit of black will create a really dark shadow tone. And if we flip back to our fine liner, if you just outline the right hand side, so this side is not getting any sunlight, you've created an easy 3D tree. So it's an easy technique. If you always do one side that's getting the light a lighter tone, and you do the other side a darker tone, you can make it look like it's one side's in the shade and one side's got a highlight. And you can just create little knocks and texture, just so your tree looks like it's got bark. Now it's up to you how detailed you want to go. A good thing to do is take photos of trees in your garden, and then you can use them as reference photo if you want to do some bark. And just while I've got that colour, I'm just going to go over my branches just to make them look a bit more professional, just so they look a bit better. So that same technique, just using that dark colour. So it looks much better. Yay! And we're going to do the same on this one. Now what I thought to do a brighter highlight. So I'm going to use some of that orange and yellow, because I think my tree just looks a bit too flat here on the right. So I'm just going to make it a little bit brighter either side. And I smeared it there, but don't worry, we can fix it. So I'm going to use some bright orange and yellow. I'm going to create a really bright highlight. I think it will look cool. So that side of the tree is getting all the sunlight, so that's why it's got such a bright highlight. And the same on this side. So on the opposite side, it's going to get really loads of sunlight. So again, just trying to emphasize that. Now it looks a bit daft because you've got one side a bit too bright. So what you can do is you can just create some texture just like we did previously. So we're just going to add some knocks and stuff using that colour. We'll do the same on the other side. So I'm just going to go over it, just make the highlight a little bit brighter. loading up my brush. I'm going to get some of the dark colour. I'm just going to merge the two colours. So all I'm doing, I'm using that blue, black and brown, and I'm just merging, just creating knocks and bumps on one side of my tree on the left hand side, and I'm just merging it into the highlight. Just so the highlight is not so harsh and the shadow is not so harsh. I'm just merging the two together. So there we go, the dark colour on one side. So whatever side is not facing the sun, it's got the dark tone, and the other side's got the highlight. There we go. And we'll do the same on this side. So all I'm doing, I'm just going across and just creating little knocks and bumps just to create the impression of bark. Now we've got that highlight down, I'm just going on the other opposite side and just creating a bit more shadow and just creating, look, just little bits of texture. It's only because these trees are in the foreground, that's why we're just spending some time with them. And if you want, look, you can use your fine liner in that dark shadow colour, and you can create a little bit of shadow or a little bit of texture in your snow as the tree sort of comes out. And you sort of get dark bits of bulbs, you get roots and things. And what you could do, if you wanted to, is you could have little sort of bushes and little sticks poking out through the snow. Again, it's just another added element of detail. So we're just using your fine liner. You could have some long grass or odd young sort of broken trees or sticks coming out. So again, it just depends how texturized you want to go, how detailed you want to go. It's going to have little stones and bits and bobs. But I don't want to put too much because I want to make it easy for everyone at home. So that looks cool. And then what you can do, if your tree's a bit ropey or it's a bit blurred or anything, a bit smudged, you can just go back and use the previous colours and just outline it and just go around it just to make it look a bit neater. So just by using the background colours, you can just make your trees look a bit nicer. Now we're going to get some burnt sienna and some orange, and I'm going to teach you another little trick. So we're going to add a little bit of green, a little bit of yellow, and we're going to load up our fan brush. So we're going to mix it all together. We're going to load up our fan brush. We're going to add a little bit more green. I want it a bit more earthy in tone. That's looking fantastic. Look at that. So we've got this really nice colour, and we're going to turn our fan brush sideways, and we're going to create the illusion of pine trees. So a pine tree is like a Christmas tree, and they have these lovely sort of pine needles, but they have these big gaps in between. So by creating a little bit different shade to the background, it's a little bit lighter, and going sideways, we're trying to create the impression of Christmas trees, sort of pine tree shapes. So look, all I'm doing, I'm going sideways. I'm letting that fan brush do all the work, and then I'm just going right up to the edge, just creating little sort of needles coming either side, and trying to create the impression of what looks like pine trees. So by just using a little different tone to the previous tones, it's a little bit lighter, and just creating these sort of needles, we can just create the impression of texture on our trees. So again, nothing difficult. So if we go this side, we're just trying to create what looks like pine needles sticking out either side, just to make our trees look a bit more 3D. And if we add some orange, so plenty of And we do the same. Now I think I went a bit too orange here, but don't worry, I'll show you the technique and then we'll change the colour. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just tipping the brush sideways, and then I'm just creating sort of the illusion of needles, sort of the pines coming out. Just leaving little gaps. So they look a bit too dark, they look a bit too harsh, the transition doesn't match. So no bother, that's the great thing about acrylics. We can just paint over them in a minute. But I just want to show you how to do these tree shapes first. So what we're going to do, we're going to create some orange and yellow. So we're going to add a lot of cad yellow to the mix. And we're just going to go over the top. So look, we're doing the same technique over and over again. So just like we did with the tree trunks and the branches, we want a little bit of the underpainting shining through, just so it looks like there's gaps to add texture. And by just tipping your brush sideways and using a fan brush, we can create the illusion of all these pine trees. Now if you are finding all these techniques for things like colour and tone and brushes helpful, please make sure to like and comment in the comments below, because it really helps the videos get seen by other artists. And thank you everyone who's liked and subscribed so far. I really appreciate the support. Now all I'm going to do is just add some green to that yellow and a little bit of orange, just to make it a bit more earthy. And I'm just going to go over that bright sort of burnt sienna colour, just a bit too harsh. But add a little bit of green to the mix, just going to make it a bit more earthy and just make the transition look a little bit more seamless. So if we've done it one side, we want it match the other side. So there we go. So looks better. Looks much more back to how it was. But now with some added detail. Now if we get some purple, and the first colour that we made, which was brown, orange and green, and we had a little bit of purple and green to the mix. Now this is dry, we can make this even darker, so we can add another layer. So again, leaving gaps, turning our brush sideways. These can be some of the pines that are in the shade, hence why they've got purple and blue. So we're using purple and blues again, remember, for shadows, to create cool tones. So any tone that's not getting any sunlight, it's more blue and purple. And all the ones that are getting sunlight are more yellows and orange, because they're warm. So they're starting to look good. Add a little bit of green to our mix. Plenty of yellow though. And we're just going to make these transitions a little bit nicer. There we go. So again, just like the colours, we're just trying to trick the viewer's eyes. So we're just going to get some purple and burnt umber and green. There we go. More burnt umber, why not? Make a really dark tone. Just in the side of the painting, I just want to make the darkest, coolest tone. So again, just to frame it, to get you to look down the middle. But same technique, leaving gaps. And what I've done one side, I always do the other side. There we go. Now, if your trees are a bit scruffy, what you can do is you can use some titanium white, or you can use the silver colour that we made earlier, and you can just poke some holes in your trees just to make them look more tree-like. So again, just a really easy technique. Just get the background colour, use a thin brush and just come down and just create some gaps. So just debate where you would have gaps. As I say, it doesn't have to be super detailed, it's just to imply some trees that are bigger than the other. By just making gaps in between, it just looks a little bit more realistic. Because you have some of the sunlight shining through in between the leaves and the tree trunks. For some reason I started using the really dark grey here, but it should have been white. So I'll paint over that in white, but it's just to show you how to do it. So look, if I zoom out, they look a bit better on the right hand side. So I'm just going to speed up the footage. Now you've seen how to do it, and we'll do the exact same thing on the left hand side. So look, all I'm doing is just poking some holes just to make my trees look a bit more spindly either side, a bit more pine like. Just put some little gaps, nothing major. Don't like that one, let's get rid of it. And we're just going to do the same technique. We're just going to put our brush sideways, we're going to mix some orange and yellow, and we're just going to do the same technique all the way down. So again, just very subtle. If it's too harsh, you can just blur it with your finger like I do, or we can just paint over it with the previous tone with that bright cad yellow. So look, all I'm doing, I'm just using some cad yellow, I'm just merging it, I'm just going over what we just painted just to soften it up and just make those pine needles just look a little less harsh, but there's just some detail. So I'm just using the cad yellow just to push it back. And as I say, if they're too harsh, just use my finger to smudge it. It's just to imply some detail, just some texture. So as I say, once you step back from the painting, once we zoom out, it's very subtle, but it just makes it look a bit more realistic. Don't worry about your trees, we'll paint them back in a minute, the ones in the foreground. So if we've lost some of our tree trunks, we'll just use the fine line and go over it. We just want to make our background just look a bit more professional while we're here. So just going to get some orange and yellow, just mix a little bit of green, just a little bit of sap green. Just do some texture on this side, not too much. I still like to create the silhouette, but there we go, it's really subtle, as I say. It's a great technique, easy peasy way to create trees. So there we go, I'm just going over the top so our transition looks really good, and I'm just going to put back our trees. So all I'm doing is using the previous tone, just going to make our branches a little bit longer. I'm just going to go over our tree trunks. Now we've put that texture in, they should stand out a little bit better now. So I'm just going to make the branches a little bit brighter. As I said many times in the acrylic painting tutorials, if you want to make your highlights a little bit brighter, sometimes you just got to go over them twice with the same colour just to make them more vibrant. I'm just going to mix some of that orange and yellow for the next tree. So again, just doing the same technique, just speeding up the footage just a little bit, just because you've all seen this before. So just working on these trees, just making them look a bit nicer. So there we go. So just by adding a second layer of paint, they look much more vibrant. I'm just going to get some pure titanium white. I'm going to leave plenty of gaps in the undercolor. I'm just going to add some highlights, and these are all the bits of snow getting really extreme sunlight, so that's why I'm using bright titanium white. So again, it's just to add some more texture and just to make it look more realistic. So we've saved our brightest highlights just for here in the foreground. So these are all the bits of snow just getting the strong sunlight. So just use bright white. And again, just leave plenty of gaps in the underpainting to shine through. Leave that texture. Now all I'm going to do, I'm just going to get some white and I'm going to add a dot of yellow to the white. I've got it pre-mixed here in a tube. But all it is white with a little tiny bit of cad yellow. And I'm using a fine liner and I'm just going to create really sharp edges on some of these trees. So I'm just going to create some bright edges just on some of the branches and some of the trees. Just to make it look like that glaring sunlight is just hitting the outer edges of the bark. So again, it's just an easy technique. Just using a little bit off white, so add just a touch of yellow to your white. Do the same on these trees. So this is the really sharp sunlight hitting the bark. And then last but not least, we're just going to get some bright white and we're just going to smooth it in just at the end of the path. We're just going to make our sun more electric. Now it's dry, as I say. Just going to reapply some of the same tone just to make it pop and make it look brighter. So we're just using some white and just poking some holes. We can just make it look like it's the sun either setting or rising, whatever way you want to think about it. I'm just going to get some orange and yellow. Just put some tiny highlights and knocks just here. So all these little finishing touches, they all just make the painting come alive. But as I say, it's up to you how detailed you want to go. I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to my art. So even when I'm doing a beginner's tutorial, I can't help myself. And I always try to add a little bit more and a little bit more. So there we go. A little bit of sunlight on the tree. Just to create the illusion of little knocks and bolts on my tree. So I've signed her in the left hand corner. So you've learned how to do this light effect. You've learned how to do pine trees, how to do the transition in colour. You've learned how to do trees with things like a fine liner and a fan brush. We've done the cool winter blues for the snow. We've got the sunlight and the texture. So my name's Murray. Thank you so much for watching this winter sunset acrylic painting tutorial. I've really enjoyed painting along with you guys at home. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We have plenty of tutorials here on the channel. So thank you very much for watching and take care of yourself. See you soon. Bye.